J.K. Simmons is like actually such a good villain. All the time. Always. This man never misses. He just always finds a way to make me hate his characters. And that is what I'm here to talk about today. Now we could chalk this up to J.K. Simmons just being a good actor, but that's boring, so I'm gonna overanalyze it. And yes, this counts as an episode of why blank is an amazing villain, but instead of analyzing connection to hero, backstory, and presence, I'm gonna analyze 3 of J.K. Simmons' best villain roles, from weakest to best. But keep in mind, none of them are bad by any means. We're gonna be taking a look at Kethric Thorm, Omni Man, and Terence Fletcher. So with all that said, let's get started with Kethric Thorm. So this is definitely the weakest of all of JK's villain roles to me, but it still highlights one of the best parts of JK's villains. His ability to make a villain absolutely and unequivocally terrifying. One of the most important things about a villain is the way that they are introduced, and let me tell you, for those of you that have played Baldur's Gate 3, you know. Kethric Thorm's introduction is fucking awesome and intimidating. When you meet Kethric Thorm, you walk in on him deciding the fate of a batch of goblins that failed him. He decides it's better to kill the goblins and deal with their failures later, and one of the goblins freaks out and throws a halberd at Kethric. Now, 1 second before I continue, this is one of the most impressive throws I've ever seen. And from a goblin of all things too? I mean, goddamn, they were in the wrong profession. That is a major league throwing arm right there. But anyway, after throwing the halberd, it looks as if Kethric was killed. But then you see this. My man opens his eyes, shrugs off the halberd that's deep in his torso, and hits us with the coldest line in the entire game.
Outside my control.
Try again.
Dude, when he said, "try again," I felt that in my bones. I did not want to fuck with this guy as a player, but of course the goblin tries again and then gets demolished. And this is just the beginning of one of my favorite attributes that JK is able to perform. The introduction of a villain. Now the reason I think Kethric Thorm is the worst of the bunch is that I actually think the overall writing of Kethric Thorm's story past this point is good, but it's nothing special, especially compared to... Now, speaking of introductions, Omni Man took the internet by storm with his intro alone. At the end of episode 1 of Invincible, Omni Man kills all of the Guardians of the Globe, this universe's Justice League essentially. Basically also, in a way, showing us how Superman versus the Justice League would probably actually go, since Omni Man draws a lot of parallels to Superman, but, you know, evil. But unlike Kethric Thorm, Omni Man stays super compelling from beginning to end. J.K. Simmons does an amazing job of showing so subtly yet strongly the internal battle going on in Omni Man, and the fact that something much darker is lurking in him, from accidentally hitting Mark too hard to always freezing up when Mark not getting his powers is brought up. And goddamn, there couldn't be a better voice for Omni Man. Like, we all know we're thinking it. A major factor is also just JK's voice. I mean, just listen to it. He just has such a good and commanding voice, fit perfectly for strong-willed villains. Now listen, I know, what a lot of you are probably thinking is,
What? Christian? How could you not have put Omni Man as the best villain J.K. Simmons has played? Omni Man is ruthless, deep, and truly evil.
And I understand that thought process. But if you're someone asking that question, then you have not watched Whiplash. Terence Fletcher, my personal favorite J.K. Simmons villain. I love Omni Man, and I think that he is actually an amazing villain, but Fletcher is such an interesting and philosophical villain. Again, to start off with, JK's ability to introduce a villain. We're introduced to Fletcher by him walking into his class and starting off band practice, but as the song goes on, he stops everyone and says someone is out of tune, and everyone goes silent with a palpable fear in the room, leaving the viewer to wonder why everyone is so scared. I mean, it's just band, right? Fletcher leans down and starts interrogating someone, asking if they think that they were out of tune. And by interrogation, I mean shaming them in every way that you could physically think about shaming someone. But the guy he was interrogating was too scared to even say anything, eventually just saying yes, because Fletcher was on him so hard that he believed he was. And after this is the genius truth, that Fletcher knew who it was all along, but since the other guy didn't know, he deemed that bad enough anyway. Now this is the introduction of Fletcher, but it's far from the best part of the audience truly seeing how Fletcher works. Right after this, Fletcher talks to Neiman, the main character, to get to know him better, and starts to lead him into a false sense of security. Then Neiman starts playing the kit, and Fletcher starts hyping him up. But then suddenly, things don't go very well. This scene has been memed to hell, so you all probably know what happens next. Fletcher keeps telling Neiman he's out of tempo, until suddenly Fletcher snaps and throws a chair at his head, and then proceeds to yell at Neiman so much until he takes away any pride Neiman had about his musical ability, and embarrasses him in front of everyone, ending it by saying, "Work harder." Now for those of you that haven't watched the movie, you may be asking, why would he be doing this? He's just kind of being an asshole for the sake of being an asshole. Well, it's because he's a true believer in that there is nothing worse than saying to someone, "Good job." Because then, people stop trying as hard to get better. And Fletcher wants to create the next music legend. So he's a master at manipulation and abuse, trying to create the next Buddy Rich. And you know what the worst part is? He basically wins. By the end of the movie, Fletcher loses his job after abusing the students so much, and he does one final Hail Mary fuck you to Neiman, to embarrass him as much as possible, after once again leading him into a false sense of security. But Neiman doesn't take his shit anymore. Neiman plays his heart out, in front of a very large audience of people, and people who would want to hire a good player. You see his father look in horror as he sees the depths of Neiman's obsession to be one of the greats. And Fletcher starts off pissed, the audacity, right? But eventually, he smiles and plays along with Neiman's stunt here, and the movie ends with presumably Neiman becoming a successful musician, meaning that in the end, Fletcher gets what he wants. Now to wrap this back to J.K. Simmons, this is the epitome of his acting to me. J.K. Simmons here is playing the role of a person who could absolutely exist in real life, and that's the most terrifying part of it all. It also shows all of J.K.'s best attributes as a villain: the introduction, the subtlety, and the philosophy behind it all. So in conclusion, why is J.K. Simmons such an amazing villain? His ability to be intimidating, his talent of subtlety, and who would have guessed, he's a good actor. Now in case any of you were wondering, here's what my individual rankings of each villain is. Here they are on screen. But if you want more content like this, you should subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. But that's about it. It's been an honor, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.